Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I am actually so excited to sit down and film this episode. I did a thing. I did a thing recently. I experienced a shamanic journey. And just to clarify up front, this was not like a plant medicine journey. I did not do like ayahuasca or anything like that. This was more of if I had to describe it, I would classify it as like a form of hypnotherapy. That's what it felt like. But I want to share with you all about that experience today because it was actually super impactful. And I think I had a really interesting story kind of leading up to what led me to book this session in the first place. So, yeah, I want to share kind of all the synchronicities that led to this, what that experience was like, and then the outcome, like how has that impacted me since that session, which actually took place almost 1 week ago. It was about 6 days ago. So let's jump right in. So actually, I think it was 2 episodes ago where I was talking about how I lost the plot. At the very end of that episode, I mentioned maybe I was going to go get a past life regression done. So I thought that that's what this was going to be. I thought maybe it was going to be energy healing, and it ended up being a shamanic journey. So, anyways, let's start from the beginning. The beginning of the synchronicities that led to this session. Okay, so back in 2023, at the very end of 2023, when I did that Reiki session where my Reiki master told me, Lisa, you are a healer. You come from a long lineage of healers, and your ancestors are wanting you to step into that. In that session, she told me, she said something along the lines of, I see you helping people journey. And she said something like hypnotherapy or like a shamanic journey. And at the time, I thought shamanic journey meant that I was going to be, out in the forest somewhere hosting a plant medicine ceremony. And I just absolutely, I just couldn't imagine that for myself, especially being a new mom. I was like, I don't really see my life. I just couldn't picture that for myself. And so I kind of took all of that with a grain of salt. At the time, I was really interested in QHHT, which is quantum healing hypnosis therapy. And that is the method by Dolores Cannon, if anyone is interested. And so I thought maybe that would kind of be the route. And then that's when I ended up experiencing hypnotherapy for myself for the first time. And then I discovered I was an energy healer. And so I was like, okay, maybe that was the actual path. And so, of course, I'm taking all intuitive information with a grain of salt and just relying on my experiences and my intuition as my guiding light, my North Star. And any intuitive information obviously can be helpful, but like I said, I take it with a grain of salt. Then, when I did my mentorship program, I had another intuitive reading with the person who was mentoring our group, and she had said to me that the archetype, I don't know if it's the archetype of my soul or the archetype of the type of healer that I am is very shamanic in nature. So that was the second time that I was hearing this term. There's this shamanic nature to the type of healing that I do. And again, taking with a grain of salt, that hadn't appeared in my reality yet. That hadn't been a part of my experience yet. At this point, it was just energy healing so far. But what she had said to me about the type of healing work that I do being shamanic in nature, she was like, all that really means is that, and excuse my language around this topic because I'm still discovering all of this in real time and I'm just keeping you up to date on that journey. So she had said that it just meant that I had this connection to the spiritual realm and that I could work across, I don't know if she said it was time, but basically being able to tie in other lifetimes. So, past life stuff and being able to connect with spirits. And so I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense to me. and it added more clarity around the shamanic piece because, like I had said before, I didn't really see myself working with plant medicine. It's not something that I have experienced for myself or feel called to experience at this moment in time. Okay, so keeping all of that in mind in terms of shamanic healing. Now, fast forward to maybe like 6 months ago or so, I had started thinking to myself, it may be helpful to experience healing by different energy healers. I had only been going to my one Reiki master who I love and adore. And I was like, you know what, if I'm going to step into this one day, maybe I should go experience, other healers and see what their style is, how they structure their healing, things like that. And so I had started to look up healers in my area, and I came across this one person whose reviews were just phenomenal. She was very well loved, and she was offering Reiki or energy healing in person in like close by to where I live. And from what I had seen, I mean, yeah, I guess there are several places that you can go, but this one caught my attention enough to screenshot it and just save it on my phone. And I did not book a session at that time, but I just kind of kept it in the back of my mind. And then recently, when I was overthinking my intuition, and I talked about it in that episode where I had been talking about losing the plot, I said I had been overthinking my intuition. And one of the things that I was overthinking was this healer kept popping into my head. And my logic was telling me, why do you need to book a session with an energy healer right now? Like, I can do energy healing on myself, so why would I need to spend money to book a session? And I was also thinking to myself, like, yeah, I could experience sessions by other healers, but at the same time, I have my Reiki master who I really trust, and maybe I should just go to her. And then also feeling like I didn't really have any questions to bring up. I didn't really know what the session would be about. And so all of this overthinking was just like, although this healer kept popping up into my head, I kind of just like pushed that down. And then when I decided, okay, we are done overthinking, we are going back to fun and it just, following joy, one of the first things that I did was reach out to this healer. And I thought to myself, she has listed on her Google page, like that she offers energy healing, but that she also offers past life regression. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll go do that because it's something different than energy healing. And, I don't really feel super called to past life regression, but at the same time, I'm following joy, following fun. And yeah, maybe there's something in that for me. I'm not going to overthink it. So I reach out to her. She texts me back. She's like, hey, I'm not offering energy healing right now, and I'm actually not offering anything in person, but I do have sessions over Zoom. And so she offered like a 15-minute consultation for free to just chat through her services and see if that would be supportive for me at this time. And so I was like, great, let's chat. And when we jumped on the phone, she was explaining the type of healing, and she had mentioned like inner child and soul retrieval and yeah, past life. And I was kind of like, okay, am I booking a past life regression? Am I booking a soul retrieval? Am I booking an inner child healing? Like, I'm not understanding, like, how does this work? And she explained, no, you just book a healing session. And how she described the healing session to take place is, we're over Zoom and she will guide me into, she called it like a meditative state or like a state of hypnosis. It reminded me of hypnotherapy. And she was like, yeah, that's definitely like what you can compare it to. And she was just kind of explaining how hypnosis is really not that scary. We enter into hypnotic states multiple times during the day, like when we're driving. And I was like, yeah, I've done hypnotherapy. I feel like I'm comfortable with that process. And so she said, we will do that because when you are in a state of hypnosis, that's where you're able to access the subconscious mind, your intuition, things like that. And in terms of what we work on in the healing session, she said, my guides, my spirit guides, would lead the session. They would lead the healing. And she is intuitive, so her guides would help her to guide the session. When I explained this to my husband before I went into the session, he was like, He was like, "I don't get it. I don't understand." And so I'll explain like what that actually looked like in practice because yeah, I can understand how that might not make sense in translation. So anyways, I called out the soul retrieval piece because I was like, "You know what? I've heard that several times and that piques my curiosity." And I had said, "I've heard that soul retrieval is a shamanic practice." And she was like, "Yeah, it is." And this is just like interesting to me because I know this history of like shamanic healing being maybe a part of my journey. And so then, as she's continuing to describe the healing session, I'm kind of thinking this kind of sounds like a shamanic journey. And she was like, "Yeah, that's definitely what you can compare it to." And she said, "That's why I call my business." I don't know it at the top of my head, but something about taking a journey within. And I was like, "Oh my God, the pieces are all connecting." I felt drawn to her, and of course, I was overthinking my intuition. Like, why would I go to her for energy healing? But I felt drawn to her. My intuition was guiding me to her because this was not about energy healing. This was about me experiencing a shamanic journey. One more synchronicity I want to call out, and then I will dive into what actually happened during the session. So I have been seeing the number 1010 everywhere. Everywhere, you guys, everywhere. So often that I actually scheduled this podcast to be released at 10:10 a.m., regardless of the day that I schedule it to go out on. Always 10:10 a.m. because I had just been seeing this number everywhere for months that I was like, this must be a special number for me. And so, when I'm prompted to pick a time, that's just what I input. So 10:10. And when I booked this session to do the shamanic journey, she had given me her availability for the week. And I was like, okay, Friday, 9 a.m., that works best with my schedule. And so I go to send her the deposit afterwards and I check my calendar. I'm like, okay, what date did I book this for? I go to check the numerical date and realize I scheduled this session to take place on October 10th, 10:10. And then we will dive into the session, but there was at one point in the session where I got up to use the bathroom. This session started at 9 a.m. and it was supposed to complete at 10:30 a.m. I booked it for an hour and a half. So I got up to use the bathroom once, and when I came back to the bed to lie down, I went to unmute my laptop and checked the clock, and again, 10:10. So I said that to her right then and there because I had told her about the synchronicity about me booking on 10:10. And then I said in that moment, I was like, what would you know? It's 10:10 a.m. And she just laughed and she was like, wow, that makes me emotional because it just really goes to show how divinely guided this entire thing was for you, which I really do feel true. Okay, so let's dive into the session itself. I really want to go over like what this felt like for me and what I experienced in this session to just kind of demystify this because I felt like going into it, and this is how I feel approaching a lot of healing sessions is I get nervous. I'm like, I feel like I'm about to walk into the unknown. I have no idea what I could find out. I have no idea, what's going to take place, and that can feel daunting sometimes. So I was absolutely feeling that before this session. I logged onto the Zoom and she was like, "How are you feeling?" And I was like, "I'm shaking." Like it was like I was freezing. I was shaking. I felt really nervous. And she said, "Maybe let's start there." She was like, "Normally I take people into, down into hypnosis, maybe more into a deeper trance state, but she's like, I feel like there's something somatic here for you. Like, let's start with these nerves." And it's funny because as I'm telling this story, I'm starting to feel that same like shaking sensation. It's almost like my body can like relive it just by talking about it. So I was nervous. And as she started talking to me just about the session, what to expect, I could already feel myself beginning to cry. And I know that this was supposed to take place during the session because I had done somatic work the night before just to like prep. I was like, let's just get anything out of the way that needs to get out of the way so that we can focus the session or kind of like maximize the time. I was focused on like, I want to be efficient and use this hour and a half for whatever healing needs to take place. And just like anything else that needs to be processed, I can leave behind the night before. So I had prepped. So coming into this, I didn't really feel like I had anything to cry about. But as soon as the session started, before we had even dug into the session and just, in our greeting, in our hellos, and her just describing what was going to take place, I was already starting to feel things somatically start to come up. So what's interesting is that I started crying, and it was like, it was a lot of crying. It wasn't just like, simple tears. I was sobbing, to be honest. And she was just kind of talking me through. She was like, like just, sharing that it's okay to cry and to take as much time as I need, that it's purging. This is supposed to take place. And what I was hearing in my head as I was crying was no time, no time, no time, no time. And that is a phrase that I hear often when I do energy work on myself, when I do somatic work. Anytime emotion is coming up for me, because I've been on this journey of learning to process my emotions. So now when I sit with my emotions and I'm crying, I'm hearing no time, no time, no time. And when that has happened, I always assume it's because I've never known why, actually. I'm like, I don't know, for some reason, maybe it's like society programming. I don't know. I was just like, for some reason, I never feel like this is an efficient use of my time to be expressing my emotions, to be letting it all out. And then as an adult, learning how to process my emotions, as I'm hearing no time, I'm saying to myself, no, we have time for this, Lisa. This is important and we have time for this. So I'm like countering that voice in my head. And that is how that is what happens when I do energy work or somatic work a lot of the time. So it was interesting that this was showing up as the very first thing in this session. And this is what we ended up diving into. And diving into this revealed so much to me that I was just completely unaware of. And it had to do with my throat chakra, and it had to do with my mindset around time scarcity. It's like, I've talked about my throat chakra on this podcast before. I've talked about that being a big thing that I'm healing. I'm healing my voice. I'm healing these beliefs that I have around my voice. And in terms of time scarcity, I've always known this is the thing. This is the thing I'm consistently running around in my life, just always thinking about the next thing and how am I going to like maximize my time and how am I going to do this efficiently in order to save as much time as possible. And I have this thing where I'm always like, especially since becoming a mom, where I feel like I'm always like fighting for time for myself and not like actually fighting, but I feel like in the tasks that I'm doing on a daily basis, it's always like, I don't know how to describe it. It's not like a resentment for the tasks that I'm doing, but I'm always thinking like, let's do everything efficiently and maximize time so that I can hopefully get some time for myself. So anyways, all to say, this session ended up being focused on my voice, my time scarcity, and how they are actually stemming from the same thing. And that was so interesting to explore because I've never connected those dots before. And I haven't dug into the time scarcity thing. It hasn't come up yet as like something that I felt like I needed to work on. I mean, I kind of always knew in the back of my mind, but it just hadn't like really come up yet. And so it was coming up now. So the very first question she asked when I was explaining to her, I'm hearing no time, no time, no time. She said, can you go back to the first memory where you felt like there was no time? I don't know if she said specifically if there was no time for you or if there was just no time. And I wasn't having a specific memory, but I was seeing an image of a baby. And this is the part where I just decided to just start trusting whatever was popping into my head. And so I said, I'm not seeing a memory, but I just see a baby. And she said, is the baby you? And I said, I don't know. I just see a baby. And so she had me as visualize myself as an adult walking over to that baby. And she, man, I can't remember. Maybe I should have filmed this episode like immediately after because I can't remember exactly the questions that she asked, but she said something along the lines of, like, what did you mean by no time? And I said, there's no time for me. There's no time for me. And it was like me as a baby feeling like there's not enough time for me. There's not enough time for me. And I was just crying and crying. And so she had me visualize myself as an adult, walk over to that baby, pick up the baby, and then she proceeded to have me repeat I'm sorry statements. So it was like me as an adult hugging that baby saying, I'm so sorry there wasn't enough time for you. And it's crazy how powerful these visualization exercises are, specifically when you are in a state of hypnosis and therefore accessing the subconscious mind. I was just feeling like I was releasing so much somatically during this process. I was crying, I was bawling my eyes out, I was shaking, my jaw was chattering. So we took care of me as a baby, and then I was having images pop into my head of like me as an adult playing with the baby and just all these different scenarios of me like spending time with the baby. And I was saying that to her, and I was saying like what I was seeing, and she was like, you now are making time for that baby, you're spending time with her. And so after that we moved on, and she was just kind of asking me like, what are you feeling? And so I would check in and be like, okay, I'm feeling a lump in my throat. And then we would explore that, and then all of a sudden I was seeing myself at the age of 7, and then I was seeing myself at the age of 21, and all of these different ages where I had felt like I was ignored or abandoned, or that my voice didn't matter. There was no time for me. It was just this consistent experience for me throughout all of these different ages in my life that was revealing to me why I have these deep rooted beliefs about my voice now, and why it was just revealing a deeper layer of what I was healing now. And it was really beautiful because it was at these different ages that I was sort of like going to these versions of myself and sitting with myself and taking care of these younger versions of me and saying these I'm sorry statements and just sharing, just like showering them in so much love. And then I collected all of them and I brought them to a safe space. So I visualized a safe space. And for me, that looked like a meadow with the sun shining and so many flowers, and the meadow just went on for days. And it was really interesting because when I brought everyone there, I was visualizing myself telling all of these versions of me, like, not only are we safe here, I was like, we can scream here because there's nobody here. And so I was telling her what I was seeing, and she was like, yeah, let him scream. And so it was like all of us, I was imagining all of these versions of myself, which is all like screaming. And it was just like, yeah, it was so healing and just such an interesting experience. I think that it was so powerful because it was like me now, the version of me today, going back and telling all of the old versions of myself, like, I'm here and I'm going to take care of you now. I'm going to take care of you now. Like, I was acknowledging these versions of me in the past and telling them, like, you're safe now because I'm here and I'm going to take care of you. And I don't know why that was so effective. I think it definitely has to do with being in a state of hypnosis and accessing the subconscious mind because you're reframing a lot, or I don't know if you're reprocessing things, but yeah, that was powerful. And then we even went to a past life because like I said, she's intuitive, and so she's hearing things from her guides and then using that to guide the session. So she brought up a past life. Well, she didn't, all she said was, I don't even remember what she said. It was something along the lines of like, I'm seeing a past life. Like, are you seeing anything? So it just like left it really open ended. And what's interesting is I was seeing like the image of like a wooden structure, and it's kind of like people with like pitchforks. And it wasn't like a super distinct memory or like anything that I was seeing. It's not like as vivid as a dream. They're just kind of like flashes of images that I was seeing. And so I saw, yeah, like a wooden structure and then a flash of like kind of like angry people with like a pitchfork. And then I was kind of debating, like, okay, is that my mind conjuring this up because I'm aware of the whole witch wound thing? And so maybe she said past life. And so I'm assuming, oh, it must be, me in a past life being burned at the stake or something. And so I was kind of like, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And then I saw rope. And then I knew it was correct because my hands lifted up, they jolted up, and they went to my neck like this. And if you're new here, I do energy work, my hands move on their own. So that was like it was like the quickest summary I've ever given. So my hands shoot up to my neck and I'm like, okay, I know. I was like, and so I said, I think I was hung. And she confirmed, she was like, yes, you were. And so then when she was doing the I'm sorry statements and having me repeat them as she has done at all the different ages that I was seeing, she said, I'm sorry you made a vow. Or it was like, I'm sorry I made a vow, one of the two. And so I was repeating, I'm sorry I made a vow. And she said, to never speak again. And I was like, oh my God. Because if you know anything about energy and the vows you make, they have energetic consequence. So for me to have made a vow in a past life that I was vowing to never speak again, because in a past life I was hung for speaking my truth, that is impacting me now in this lifetime. So we cleared that. And again, crying and shaking and like a very much a somatic release. And she asked my higher self to answer, what lessons am I learning in this lifetime due to that past life? And immediately what popped into my head is the power of my voice. A lesson that I am learning in this lifetime because of that lifetime is the power of my voice. And it was like dots connecting of like, I knew that this podcast and, TikTok and sharing my story and speaking my truth and allowing myself to be visible, I knew that had to do with my throat chakra. But this was giving me another layer of context that I was like, it's blowing my mind right now. It's like, no wonder I feel so committed to this. No wonder I feel this determination to continue moving forward, or knowing that this is so important for me to do, regardless of how uncomfortable it may have been to step into. It just like it clicked for me in a different way. And especially the vow piece, I think that was really interesting to hear. So yeah, we covered a lot in 90 minutes in this session, and I'm, summarizing to the best of my ability what took place. But there was so much more that I didn't discuss around like what I was seeing or remembering. No, I'm not gonna say remembering, because there was at no point where there was like a specific memory of something occurring. It was just like flashes of images that I was seeing that allowed me to know what it was that was taking place that was impacting how I felt about the importance of my voice. And this overarching theme of not feeling like there was ever time for me throughout all of these different ages. So the outcome of this session, I mean, I've done a lot of healing work. You guys know I've done energy work, I've done somatic work, I've done hypnotherapy, I've done nervous system regulation. Just I've spent so much time just healing, and it has all been very gradual. Like there have definitely been times where I've sat down to do energy work and somatic work and I feel a lot better afterwards. I feel like a major release took place, But this, and the reason I dedicated an entire episode to this is because the impact that this had was immediate, and it was very noticeable for me. So I finished this session at 10:30. Actually, we didn't get off the phone until like 11, 9 to 11. Yeah, it was about 2 hours that we were on the Zoom call together. And then I went to go pick up my son at 11:45, and one of the first things that I noticed is for the rest of the day my level of presence. I was so present, and it has been 6 days, and I still feel a different level of presence. And I believe that why that is taking place is because of the healing work from this session around time. I think that so much of this time scarcity mentality has stemmed from never feeling like there was time for me. And when you have a deep rooted belief, a subconscious belief, if I'm believing from on a subconscious level that there's never time for me, then I'm going to create a reality where there's never time for me. And so that's what I have done. And I've been I feel like I've been combating that for so long over the past year of just like, all of the conversations that I've had about structure and flow and how am I reworking this, and you know the thing about my phone and turning off my phone to try to feel more present, and just all of these things that I've done in order to attempt to lean into acceptance of the moment, because I'm constantly in this state of just like rushing and getting to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing from this place of there's never enough time for me. In terms of the healing around my throat chakra, you know what I'll say? Because I do think that a lot of healing took place in this session. But the thing about soul retrieval that she said to me in the beginning, actually, when we were talking about booking the session, she was like, "What I'm sensing from you is that you've done so much work. There has been so much work that I've been doing, that now I've created a safe space to be ready for this." So, like, yes, I want to say like this one session like changed everything, but at the same time, it's like, no, I've been doing so much work to heal my throat chakra that allowed for this healing to take place. So I will say that the healing for my throat hasn't felt as extreme post session, but one of the things that I did notice is that on Spotify, it has allowed you to share your podcast in video form for, I don't know, probably as long as I've had this podcast. And it has just never occurred for me to do it. And then after this session, I was editing the last episode of this podcast, and I just had like the intuitive hit of like, oh, you should upload that video to Spotify. And I was like, oh, yeah, I should do that. And I didn't feel fear to do it. I mean, okay, it was like slightly, no, I want to say slightly uncomfortable, but like not even really. I was just like, oh yeah, I should do that. And I feel like before I've had this thing about like sharing in video form. But yeah, I think for me, just uploading the video to Spotify, even that is showing me that a level of healing took place, because that's something that I hadn't even considered before. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, that's a great idea, Lisa. Let's do that. And I did do that. So yeah, that session was really powerful. And a few reflections, a few things that I want to say. One thing that I took away from it was just that the session was so loving all the way through. All the way through. And I think that has to do with the specific healer that I was working with. But, you know, I think for a long time, I've felt like, oh my gosh, like we're in the woo. Like, I don't know, a lot of people in my personal life that are in this the way that I am. And for a long time, that's made me feel different. And a lot of time in the beginning, it made me feel wrong. And I've started to build more of a community sort of in this space that allows me to have the courage to continue to step more into this. But I it's just, after having experienced that session, it was like this all of this work that I've done in the woo, all of this healing work, how can this be crazy if it is this loving? It All of it has just it has just come from such a loving place, and I have just felt held by others in a different way. And yeah, anything this loving cannot be crazy. That's what I kept telling myself. That was a reflection that I had after experiencing this session. And I call this out because I spent 90 minutes crying and I spent 90 minutes digging deep into inner child wounding and I mean, even past life trauma. And I felt so loved and supported through that entire experience. And I walked away thinking, wow, that was amazing. That was beautiful. So that was one of my reflections. Another one was I think that a shamanic journey, in my eyes, after having experienced it, it's very similar to what I experienced in hypnotherapy, but just adding in like a spiritual component in it. So she was having me work with my higher self throughout the process, and my higher self was revealing information to me. Her level of intuition was helping to guide the session, so she was aware of the past life, or, there were other times where I was saying things that were maybe unclear. And when she was repeating the I'm sorry statements, through her intuitive knowing, she was knowing things that took place. So there was one where she was like, I'm so sorry he broke your spirit. And I didn't say that, but she knew, and that's what took place. So different things that she was able to know that helped her to guide the session. And then, her ability to like create a safe container, make sure that I was protected. And from that, I felt really safe to explore. So just like different things that had similarities to hypnotherapy, but I think that adding the extra layer of the spiritual component really I personally really enjoyed because obviously that is where that is where we're at. And the last thing that I'll say is about the power of our beliefs to shape our reality. You know, I've believed this, I've known this, and this was just another example for me that after I was able to discover this piece about my voice not feeling important and not feeling like there was time for me, then I was able to have a different picture of my life and just see all the different places where these deep rooted beliefs were impacting me. Specifically, the piece about time and not having time for me, because that was something that just like caught me off guard. I wasn't aware of that I was holding on to this subconscious belief. So to then have an awareness around that and to see all the different ways that that was playing out, that was really impactful. So, yeah, our beliefs are powerful, and to be able to access the subconscious mind and have a healing modality to be able to like go in and bring awareness and to heal those, that's life changing. So I'm grateful for the experience. I immediately felt like I wasn't done after the session. I was like, I don't feel the urge to like do this again tomorrow, but I feel like there's more work to do here. So I think that I'm going to do a few more sessions and, allow myself to continue to integrate this for at least another week or so. And then, maybe do a session every 2 weeks and see what else we discover. I feel like there's some ancestral stuff to dive into that was like coming up towards the end of the session, but we didn't have time for. So we will see. But anyways, thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I will see you again next time.